Which event in history will always be funny? Story 1. Ancient Korea had special recording officials, whose job was to record everything. They were considered separate from the government, so the emperor of the time wasn't allowed to give them orders or tell them not to record something. Of course, some emperors would try anyway. On one occasion, King Taejong, 15th century, fell off his horse while hunting. The recorder nearby wrote it down. The emperor insisted that it be removed from the record, and even tried to have the report destroyed. This led to some nonsense, as the emperor kept destroying their work, but the recorders kept copying it and hiding it in increasingly obscure places, and of course, recorded the whole thing as it happened. A few hundred years later, and the only thing that emperor is famous for is trying to hide the fact he fell off his horse. Story 2. In England, outside Bristol Zoo is the car park, with spaces for 150 cars and 8 coaches. It has been manned 6 days a week for 23 years by the same charming and very polite car park attendant with the ticket machine. The charges are £1 per car and £5 per coach. On Monday the 1st of June 2009, he did not turn up for work. Bristol Zoo management phoned Bristol City Council to ask them to send a replacement parking attendant. The council said that car park is your responsibility. The zoo said the attendant was employed by the city council. Wasn't he? The council said, what attendant? Gone missing from his home is a man who has been taking daily car park fees, amounting to about £400 per day for the last 23 years. Total some £2.9 million. Story 3. During the Napoleonic Wars, a French ship sank off the coast of Hartlepool, England. The only survivor was the captain's pet monkey, which she always dressed in a French military uniform. The locals freaked out because the law was that any French military found on British soil must be executed as a spy. So they ordered the standard punishment spies: death by hanging. Except instead of dying, the monkey just kept climbing up the rope, because it was a monkey. Hartlepool has since embraced their failure at executing a tiny primate for military espionage. Their local football team is nicknamed the Monkey Hangers. Story 4. The Spanish chicken farmer Juan Pujol Garcia tried to become a spy for the MI5, but they rejected him. He then applied to become a spy for the Nazi SS, who accepted him. The SS gave him the order to start a spy network in London, but instead he set up shop in Lisbon. There, he started feeding the Nazi commanders a bunch of horseshit intel, based on publicly available newspapers and magazines. They were believable enough for the Nazis to accept it as truth, even though they were completely made up. Every once in a while, he would be confronted about bad intel. He'd blame it on one of his fictional subordinates and told his commanders he had rectified the problem. In one situation, he told the Nazis that his subordinate had fallen ill and later died. A fake obituary was placed in the newspapers to back his story up. He even convinced the Nazis to pay a pension to the again fictional agent's widow. The MI5 became aware of his existence after they saw the Kriegsmarine waste considerable effort in hunting down a non-existing convoy based on Garcia's again fake intel. They enrolled him into their ranks, and that's when his bullshittery started getting serious. He was given the nickname Garbo, in reference to the best actor in the world, Greta Garbo. Because the Nazis believed he was one of theirs, they even sent him an enigma to encode the messages he was sending them. It was promptly turned over to the codebreakers at Bletchley Park. His most important work was on Operation Fortitude. He helped convince Nazi high command that the invasion of Normandy was a diversion. Officers believed a larger army was due to land in Calais. For his efforts, he was awarded the Iron Cross, authorized by Hitler himself. Understandably, the medal was awarded via radio. He was then also given an MBE medal by the British King, making him one of the few people who received medals from both sides. He faked his death and fled to Venezuela after the war, where he then ran a bookshop. His secret identity was undiscovered until a journalist got interested in the story and managed to track him down in 1984. He managed to finagle the real name from a former spy, and then found Garcia after literally calling every J. Garcia in the Barcelona phone book until he managed to get in contact with Garcia's nephew. Story 5. In the 1950s, two guys ended up controlling 98% of the onion market in the US, which was done by convincing the farmers that grew them to sell to them, otherwise they would flood the market with onions. A little bit later, they flooded the market with onions to the point where a 50-pound bag of onions went for 10 cents, which was less than the bag containing them. These guys ended up making millions off of this, and because of them, trading onion futures in the US is now banned. Story 6. The King of France annulled his marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine because she failed to give him a male heir. The official reason given was consanguinity. They were too closely related. She promptly married Henry, Duke of Normandy, future King of England, 8 weeks after the annulment. Over the following 13 years, they had 8 children together, including 5 boys. The King of France, meanwhile, only had 1 son by his 3rd marriage. I will never not find it funny that she popped out 5 boys to her new husband, straight after her being cast aside for being unable to have a boy. Story 7. Potatoes were not very popular as a food in France, like they were seen as fit only for animals. A pharmacist named Parmentier knew they were good food and wanted to popularize them among the working class. He got a 2-acre farm to grow potatoes and placed armed guards around it. People assumed armed guards meant something very valuable was growing there, so they began to steal the potatoes. That's how potatoes became popular in France's working class. Story 8. During the heights of the Cold War, somewhere deep in the halls of the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, intelligence officers came up with the idea to parachute thousands of XL condoms labeled medium onto the Soviets. The idea behind the operation was to undermine the morale of people living in the USSR by implying that the men of us were superior. Story 9. The 1904 Olympics Marathon in St. Louis. It reads as a mockumentary. The winner was later disqualified. When it was discovered, he ended up getting a ride from someone. Only 14 of the participants actually finished as the road they ran on was dusty, and dust was causing many of them to not be able to breathe. One of the finishers took a nap. The eventual winner drank a concoction of strychnine, raw egg, and brandy. The designer of the course decided to test a theory he called purposeful dehydration. So the course lacked water for the participants. The Cuban representative showed up in a long-sleeve shirt and pants. Someone assisted him in cutting his pants into shorts. He raised money to make it to St. Louis. But when he reached New Orleans, he gambled it all away and had to hitchhike the rest of the way. He was the one to take a nap after eating rotten fruit during the race and had stomach cramps. One of the racers collapsed and coughed up blood due to dehydration and had to have surgery for a dust-lined esophagus. 4th place finisher got chased off course by a dog. The whole thing was an absolute shit show. Story 10. When the Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés, were laying siege on the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs were holding out a lot longer than expected. Apparently, the city being built on a lake, among a complex canal system, and out of almost entirely fireproof materials, was something of an advantage to them. One day, one of the conquistadors with Cortés says, "Hey fuckers, guess what? I know how to build a trebuchet. Let's build one and show these indigenous ashholes what's what." I may be paraphrasing here, but that was the general sentiment recorded by Benel Diaz, who was present at the time, in his record of events The Conquest of New Spain. The Aztecs also recorded the incident on their side. They watched from across the lake as a large piece of complicated-looking machinery was constructed from wood on the shore. They weren't sure what they were looking at, but knew it probably wasn't good news for them. They watched, nervous but compelled by curiosity, as the payload consisting of a single large boulder was heaved into place on the strange device. Then the wooden construction began to turn slowly, taking aim. And suddenly the counterweight is let loose, swinging heavily, heaving the boulder into the air, landing a few dozen yards away in the lake. The Aztecs continue to watch from afar. Looks like the Spanish are kinda yelling at each other about something. Lots of pointing, lots of raised voices. Guess that wasn't exactly the effect they were going for. On the Spanish side, it's finally agreed that trebuchet payloads are like pancakes. First one is always kind of a dud, we all know that. The Spanish commence to reload the trebuchet. Now that the Aztecs know what it's supposed to do, they clear everyone out of the line of fire. They have plenty of time because it's not exactly a speedy process to load it up. The Spanish released another boulder payload. This one manages to knock a hole in the wall of the now totally empty marketplace. Annoying, but not exactly devastating. The Aztecs watch as the Spanish argue some more, and then finally wheel the trebuchet away in shame. It is never seen again. That is all for today. If you have enjoyed this video, do you like and subscribe? I post once a week or more. You can also subscribe to my Patreon below to support me. Hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and hope you will check my other videos on screen.